Okay.
Yeah, it's you.
When do you get him talking about the Korean War? I said, oh boy, I smell a speech coming up. So here we are. So you guys are going to have to take turns with the mic. And I hope everybody can hear them. So I'm going to hand this to Cloyce. Give me 1 second, Cloyce.
Okay. Thank you. I want to say first, I want to thank my family for being here. My wife had a stroke this summer and left me. I couldn't do much, so they came over to my house most of the summer, cooked for me, did whatever, washed clothes. Then I want to thank Paul Carr for all he did for me too. He brought me dinner just about every night all summer long. Well, anyway, I was born in 1931. Went to school in Williamston. I was a graduate in 1949. In 1950, I went to work for Hunter's Beverage Company, which was over here behind me, where they keep the golf carts now. And I worked there till maybe a year. Then in April 1951, I come home from work and my mother said, "You got a letter from the draft board." I said, "Oh, okay." So I opened it up and it said, "Greetings." May 15th, you're supposed to go up on Capitol Avenue, in front of the Veterans Building, and you'll be bused down to Detroit and be sworn into the Army. So before that, my buddy, he volunteered to go with me. He said, "We want to be together." So, okay. So after we went down to Fort Wayne, got sworn in, we went to Battle Creek, Fort Custer. We was there 2 or 3 days. Then orders came down for us to go to basic training. So I asked my buddy Claude, I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Well, I'm going to Maryland." I forget what the camp was, but I said, "Well, I'm going to Fort Raleigh, Kansas." So I said, "Well, we weren't together very long." I said, "I'll see you later." It was 2 years before I seen him. Well, anyway, went to Fort Raleigh, Kansas, taking basic training, 14 weeks. And we was about 6, 8 weeks in basic training. We had a flood out there. We flooded the whole camp. We had to go in the hills and live in pup tents until they got cleaned up down there at the camp. And then we went and finished our basic training. After we finished our basic training, we went home on leave for 30 days. And after that, we were supposed to report to Willow Run Airport. That's between Ypsilanti and Detroit. They made B-24 bombers there during the Second World War. I don't know if anyone realized that or not. But anyway, we flew to Fort Lawton, Washington. That's just outside of Seattle. And we was there for about 3 or 4 days. Then we went down to Pier 91 and we loaded on a ship, a Marine Lynx. It was a merchant marine ship. It took 14 days to go across the ocean. We went to Yokohama. There we was processed there and divided up the divisions we went to, and I just happened to be sent to the 21st Regiment, 40th Division. So they gave us winter clothes and stuff because we was going to Korea. So we boarded a ship there in Yokohama and went around the southern tip of Japan and went up Yellow Sea, went to Incheon. We was on a boat there for about a day, not quite. We had to wait for the tide to go in so we could get on landing crafts that go in there. So we got in there and we was there a day, and then the next day they loaded us on a truck up to the front lines north of the 38th parallel, the DMZ. And I was assigned to the 24th Division. They were there, so I was a replacement. And it wasn't only a couple days, I was out on a patrol. We seen a little action that day, going out and see if they're building up, see if they're going to attack their line, DMZ, but they didn't. And then about 3 days later,
Cloyce, can you push that down? Hold it down a little bit.
right here, okay. About 3 days later, about 3 days later, we went on an ambush patrol in front of our line. We were only out there about 15 minutes, and the Chinese were on a patrol out there, and we spotted them. So we opened fire on them. We could just barely make them out. So I emptied my clip with eight bullets in it. And I'm pretty sure I hit one of the Chinese there. But anyway, I tried to reload my gun. I couldn't do it. It was so cold out. My hand was so cold I couldn't push the clip in the gun. And I was scooted down. I was trying to load it and everything. My squad leader come back and said, "Where you been?" I said, "We pulled out of here a couple of minutes ago." I was trying to load my gun. I didn't know they was pulling out. It was so cold. So he got me. We went back, went to our positions, our bunkers. The next morning, that night, I had a white, like a sheet over me with a peak on my hood on over my helmet. I looked at that hood, and there was a bullet hole through it, and it was brown around it, and that was never in there before. So I come pretty close to getting hit in there because I could hear bullets cracking over us. So we pretty much, for the next couple months, went on patrol, and pulled guard duty, and then we went in reserve for about 2 weeks after that. We came back, and the 4th Division come over and relieved the 24th Division, because the 24th Division was in there ever since the first of the war. And so the 4th Division was a National Guard outfit out of California. And they trained in Japan, made the company and the whole thing. They come over and relieved the 24th Division, but I wasn't there long enough to go back to the 24th. So I stayed there with them. They had no experience in combat or anything, and I already had been there 3-4 months. And all of a sudden they come up and wanted a company patrol, go out and contact the enemy. And I knew where they was going. I knew what they was coming into. So they went on a patrol there, and they come to this place where the Chinese were, and I knew we was going to get it because they took them head on. We lost about 3 men. One guy was just in Korea 3 days, and he got killed. And I was in this, across a little land there, and I had to get over where the rest of the guys were. So I took running over this open area, zigzagging. I kept hearing cracking where they were shooting at me, but I was zigzagging so I wouldn't get hit. So I got over there where the rest of the company was, around this hill. And this sergeant first class, he had his stripes on his shoulder and everything, which he shouldn't have had. He said, "Odell," he said, "how can we get out of here?" And he no more than said that, and he went down, got hit. But to get the rest of the company out, they had to call in the tanks to come out and fire a smoke screen to cover the area so we could evacuate it and get back to our front lines. So after that, he went on patrols for a while and zigzagged around, and finally our regiment was moved to another area called the Iron Triangle. We was on an outpost. That was between the 2 lines, between the DMZ and where the Chinese were. And I knew right then, boy, we're in trouble out there in the middle of nowhere. So one day, first part of June, we was in our bunkers there. I heard mortar shells coming in, firing at us. And all of a sudden I seen the smoke come up out of this one position. Right then I knew someone was in trouble, so I told the other two guys with me and said, come on, we got to go up there. So somebody heard me and said, well, we're not going. What I did, I went up there. There lay two guys in the trench. Both had their legs blown off. It was a direct hit right in where they were standing. And one guy was unconscious, and the other guy, his name was James Terry, he laid there. One of the legs was off halfway between the knee and the ankle, and the other one was just above the ankle, and just his foot was hanging there with his flesh. So I cradled him in my arm and talked to him. I said, "It'll be all right," and wiped his face off because it was all dirty from the dirt. And I kept hollering for the medic, medic, medic. And they finally came maybe about 2 or 3 minutes after. So he came down there. He seen the situation. He got his scissors out and cut his pant leg up to his hip. And he said, "Pull him over a little bit so I can get a shot in his hip." So I did. He gave him a shot of morphine, eased the pain. And I learned later that they gave him the Silver Star for what he did, and I got the Bronze Star, which is lower than the Silver Star, but I always thought I should have had it. But it was the 40th Division, they all stuck together. They didn't like us guys for some reason. But anyway, I'll tell you more about him in a few minutes. But about 5 nights later, there was a mortar squad, 4.2, down at the edge of the outpost. They must have fell asleep, wasn't standing guard. The Chinese infiltrated it and killed all 11 of them with grenades, throwing them in their positions where they were. Then about 3 weeks later, we went on patrol, get in contact with the enemy. It was about 9 o'clock at night, and we got in contact with them about 2:30 in the morning. And our leader up front said, "Goose, hit the dirt." And we hit the dirt just as fast as we could, and that grenade went off. And we withdrew back, and I knew I was missing my squad leader. His name was Price. And I said, kept hollering his name, and he didn't answer, and I figured he had it. But we withdrew back maybe 25 yards, and we had a lieutenant there. He wanted to leave him up there. And he called back to the rear and told him, "We've got casualty and we can't get him." They said, "Well, you better get him." But I had to follow orders, and I said, "Well, I'll go up there and get him." So I took off and went up there and found him, and he was dead. And I carried him off down the hill. And I'll tell you something about later about him. Then we was on that outpost, maybe another 30 days. We went back and reserved because there were so many guys ready to go home. And they had their points, and it was time to rotate home. And it was about September, or the end of August. I had enough points to go home, more than 40, but you're supposed to have 40. And a lot of them guys in the National Guard were going home. So in the meantime, while I was there in reserve, we was getting replacements to replace us guys that was going home. So I left to go home. Must have been the end of September, and had trucked down to Incheon. From there we went back to Sasebo. We got new uniform. They sewed our patches on, our stripes and everything. And off we went on the boat, Marine Adder, went to Seattle, Washington, back to Seattle, Washington. When we pulled into port there was tugboats around shooting water up in the air and horns blowing and everything, welcoming us home. That was a wonderful feeling, I'm telling you. But we processed through Fort Lawton. I flew to Fort Custer in Battle Creek, and from there I went home. Greyhound bus. I got off the bus. My mother was sitting over in the store, Baldine, what they call it, sitting there, and she knew I was coming home pretty soon, but she came down that Sunday night. when I got off in that bus and walked across the street, she seen me, she come running out and threw her arms around me. It was such a wonderful feeling, I'm telling you. I imagine a lot of guys like that. But anyway, over the years, I got married, had children. Now, I just wondered what happened to these guys. We got a computer, and I found out the guy's name was James Terry, so I clicked on it, zebra search or something like that. Typed his name in there, Texas, and his name James Terry. Guess what? About 35 guys with that name was on there. I said, oh, how am I going to do it? So I got each of their phone numbers. I said, I'll just start calling until I find the right one. So I got down to 6 after a couple of weeks. And I said that morning, I'm going to call them all. And the heck with it then. And I had one name up on the edge of the paper. That address was up in the northeast corner of the state, and I didn't think he'd be up there because he was from Galveston, Texas, and it was further away. It was not far from Arkansas and Louisiana. So I'm going to call that number and get it off in there and throw it away because I didn't think it'd be on there. So I called that number. The lady answered the phone and said, is this James Terry resident? And they said, yes. I said, was he in Korea? She said, yes. I said, did he have his legs blown off? Yes. I said, is he still alive? He said, I guess so. He's sitting in the next room. So he came to the phone and we talked, I bet, for 2 hours. And he told me, he said, you know, they have a reunion down here to Schulenburg, Texas. It's between San Antonio and Houston. And I said, I'll come down to it, and I'll stop and see you on the way. So we did. We did that 2006, 2007. 2008, we didn't go down. 2009, we went down. I talked to him on the phone. He said, yeah, come on down. He said, we'll talk it over, talk things and everything. So we got within 5 miles of his house, and I said, we better give him a call, just let him know we're coming. We'll be there in about 10, 15 minutes. And the girl answered the phone, and I told her who I was. I called him, and his daughter answered the phone. I told him who I was, and I said, tell your dad that I'll be there in 10 minutes. He says, I got bad news for you. Daddy died last night. Boy, that was a shock, kind of, because he was such a close friend, what we went through. So that night they had visiting hours in Henderson, Texas, and we went down there. And the funeral was the next day on Saturday. It was at the cemetery in the tent. Of course, I'm always early getting there. My wife got there maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours for the funeral. So we just wandered around, and finally a couple other guys showed up that was in the army with him. And then the hearse pulled in with the coffin, and they just had 2 guys, and they needed someone to carry the coffin. Just 2 of them couldn't do it, so I thought let's get 2 guys, myself. We, like pallbearers, took it inside the tent. But I was thinking, it's funny, you know, I saved his life over there and then carried him here to his funeral. But anyway, his daughter came to me and said, Mr. Odell, would you do me a favor? And I said, what? He said, would you stand up and tell them everything, what happened, everything? I said, sure, I'll do it. So I did. And so that was it, and we went on home. Then the next year, this other guy that got killed in front of me in Korea, I found out where he lived, Vinton, Iowa. And I said, I don't know his phone number, his relative's phone number, or whatever. I said, I'll call and put in Vinton Funeral Home, Vinton, Iowa. And I called that number, and the guy answered the phone. I told him who it was, and he said what I wanted, and she said, well, I can't give out information or anything like that. And he said, but you give me my phone number, your phone number, And I'll call some of the family that's still alive there. He had 2 sisters and brothers still alive, and they're all in their 80s. So it wasn't 5 minutes, the phone rang, and there she was on the phone. And I talked to her, and I made arrangements to come up in 2 or 3 weeks, a certain day. She gave me her address. It wasn't too far from town. Said go down 2 miles and turn right, and it was just around the corner. They were beef farmers. Anyway, we drove down there, got to the corner and turned it. We seen the house, and I bet there was 24 cars there. Everybody, relatives and everybody from all over the state came there and wanted to know how he died and everything. So I had a couple pictures of him too. I took of him when I was in Korea, and I give them to her, and they were so thankful. They had cameras, video cameras, taking everything. In the afternoon, they took me down to the cemetery, showed me his grave and everything, and there was a reporter there, and they made 2 papers in Iowa, Dubuque, Iowa, and Denton, Iowa. But it was quite an experience, and I checked on the internet. They have a site there called Project Korea. Is that what it is?
I don't
You don't know about it? Everybody that died or wounded in Korea, their names there, and you could leave a note on there and everything. And this guy that died got killed after being in Korea 3 days on that patrol. I left the thing, told him how he got killed and everything. And some guy was looking up names, especially for this brother of the guy that got killed. Told him how he got killed and everything, and that made the paper down there. But even them 11 guys got killed. I looked their names up on the zebra search, and some of the relatives were on there. One relative emailed me and asked about some relative got killed, but that's the end of my tour in Korea, and I don't regret going there one bit. I didn't really want to go at first, but I'm glad I did go. It's quite an experience. So I just soon turn the microphone over to Robert now.
Thank you, Cloyce.
Thank you.